This is NTD Evening News. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Cleanup continues in the wake of deadly Hurricane Milton, which has claimed the lives of at least 16 people. Thousands are still being rescued as many residents remain without power. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Milton hit Florida as a Category 3 hurricane on Wednesday night near Siesta Key. It has since been downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone and is expected to keep weakening in the coming days. At least 16 fatalities have been confirmed in Florida due to the storm, including 5 from tornadoes in St. Lucie County. President Biden provided an update on the federal government's response to Hurricane Milton.
We're going to be going to the Congress. We're going to need a lot of help. We'll need a lot more money as we identify specifically how much is needed. Estimate that it's caused damages around $50 billion from Hurricane Milton alone. Just alone, $50 billion. I want everyone in the impacted areas to know we're going to do everything we can to help you pick back up the pieces and get back to where you were.
As of Thursday night, first responders have rescued approximately 1,000 people, and efforts are ongoing as officials warn that floodwaters in some areas have not yet gone down. In a dramatic rescue, a crew from Coast Guard Air Station Miami heroically saved a man who was found clinging desperately to a cooler about 30 miles off the coast of Longboat Key. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis gave an update on debris removal efforts, highlighting the progress being made across the state as crews work around the clock.
We paused a lot of our road projects with the Department of Transportation, and we did an emergency debris removal, and we were here in Manatee, at the Berry Islands, Pinellas. We did like 50,000 cubic yards of debris in 72 hours.
He also emphasized that people in need of shelter can still stay in hotels, assuring that accommodations remain available for those displaced by Helene or Milton.
Some people had storm surge, they had to muck and gut. It may take some time to rehab that. You can stay in a hotel for up to 60 days, and it'll likely be extended for perhaps up to 3 to 6 months. So,
more than 2 million customers were without power in Florida on Friday, according to utility tracker Find Energy. Melissa Satius from Duke Energy reported that as of 6 a.m. Friday, 845,000 customers across 35 Florida counties were without service, with Pinellas County being the hardest hit. Damage assessments began early yesterday with crews and drones deployed at sunrise.
In addition to helicopters to do surveying. At the same time, we began restoration of critical facilities such as hospitals, 911 centers, lift stations, water treatment plants, those kinds of things.
President Biden is scheduled to travel to Florida on Sunday to visit areas impacted by Hurricane Milton. Christina Corona, NTD News.
At least 16 people have died as a result of Hurricane Milton. In St. Lucie, Florida, multiple tornadoes killed 6 people and destroyed homes. NTD's Jack Bradley joins us live from St. Lucie. Jack, how are the recovery efforts out there?
We're here at Al's Red Barn where multiple structures are destroyed. This was once a thriving location, but now devastation. Take a look at this structure behind me. Search and rescue efforts are definitely underway here, and this building used to have a second story to it. Now it's a 1-story, and the owner is still deciding what to do going forward, as this place used to be home to a lot of citrus fruits. People could come here, get citrus fruits at Red Barn, but now look at this devastation. Over here we can see an entire rooftop that belonged to the second story on the ground here. Down power lines ripped out of the ground, snapped in half right here, over here, and they're currently not active right now, so it's safe to walk near them. But there are 9-inch nails here on this part of the roof, and this is drywall actually that we're looking at right now. Over here, if we see the destruction on this roof, it's still unclear where the owner is going to go from here, but he told me that the devastation is definitely ruining their livelihoods as well. Take a look at the damage over this way. I want to show you. Now, as far as this is St. Lucie, the tornadoes here are not common, but houses in many places were destroyed. This entire area is right now in a blackout. And blackouts are among many of the concerns the residents here are facing. Utility workers are trying to get power restored. And here in St. Lucie, the tornado killed 6 people just about 10 minutes north of here. And I spoke to some of the residents that experienced the devastation, and they told me that their world is turned upside down. Take a look.
It was scary, very scary. I never seen anything like this before in my life. Traumatized right now still. Blessed to be alive. And one thing I can say, and two things for sure, if ain't another one come here, God damn it, I'm gone.
I had a shed. It was on a block or whatever, and within the 3 seconds or whatever it took, it blew all my shed over. All the trees came down, and if you can see this, it's not my tree. It came from over there, and all these trees was in my yard. And we had water up to the road.
So what now?
Well, one thing I can do now is wait on God to send me somebody to help me. You know, hopefully FEMA will help me whenever that time comes. So we'll see. But like right now, I ain't got no water, no electricity. So you got to flush toilets the old-fashioned way. Get the water out the canal and flush it.
Now, just north of here, about an hour north, the tornadoes didn't impact the area too badly, but people still felt the effects of the hurricane. A lot of the people who are living in Tampa are now driving home. They stayed over on the East Coast while the storms were happening, and now they're heading back, but the traffic is incredible. Take a look at what they told me earlier.
We pretty much had a hurricane party at the hotel with all the other people. Yeah. Hanging off the balcony, drinking, you know.
Okay.
It was a good time.
Too much information. They said no power, no water.
We're hoping that changes by the time we get home.
A little bit of flooding, some trees down, some people got like roof problems and things like that. But other than that, it wasn't as bad as they expected.
And how's the journey back home?
Terrible so far. How long were we stuck on this road?
We were here for over an hour. I suppose there was a bad accident here somewhere.
Yeah.
We were backed up all the way past the county line.
It's crazy. I've been driving. I left at like 11:30. Usually it's like a 3.5-hour drive. It's about to take me like 5 hours to get there.
Yeah, Class Hamster came home with us the Friday before and was expected to stay 2 days. He's been with us now for about a week.
Now, as you can see here behind me, this flag is at half-mast, and that's very emblematic of what's happened here in this town. Deaths here have reached 6 in total due to those tornadoes that hit here. Many of the tornadoes carried large structures, buildings were lifted off the ground, some residents tell me, and a lot of the homes being boarded up in anticipation for this. And in total, this hurricane, Milton, has brought 16 deaths so far confirmed as a result. Now, authorities say that the death toll is likely to come up a little bit as search and rescue efforts are underway. Back to you.
Jack, thank you for that update, and stay safe out there. Vice President Kamala Harris followed up events in Las Vegas and Phoenix yesterday with a campaign event in Scottsdale, Arizona today. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
Vice President Harris finished up a 3-day Western U.S. tour with a campaign event in Scottsdale, Arizona. During a talk, she praised Senator and former Republican presidential candidate John McCain, who passed away in 2018 after a long battle with brain cancer.
John McCain, who, we didn't agree on everything, but man, what about an incredible American hero?
Harris also said she wants to create a bipartisan council of advisors
who can then give feedback on policy as we go forward.
Former President Barack Obama started a campaign sprint for Vice President Harris in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on Thursday.
Are you fired up?
Obama made his case for Harris to about 400 people at the University of Pittsburgh Fitzgerald Fieldhouse.
We need a president who actually cares about solving problems and making your life better, and that's what Kamala Harris will do.
Obama brought up Harris's plan to implement a $6,000 tax credit for first-time parents.
I don't have to tell a lot of you, raising kids is hard. And she wants to make it easier to afford stuff like a crib or a car seat or diapers.
One of his biggest messages, though, was encouraging people to, quote, get off your couch and vote.
Put down your phone and vote.
Same old tired playbook.
Grab your friends and family and vote.
Reporting in Washington.
Vote for Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
Along with Obama, former President Bill Clinton will be hitting the road for Harris starting on Sunday in Georgia. It's reported that he'll be doing smaller scale events in swing states, as well as visiting, quote, hard-to-reach rural voters. Also announced, First Lady Jill Biden will start campaigning for Vice President Harris. For 4 days starting on Saturday, she'll visit Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania to, quote, highlight Vice President Harris's vision for a new way forward. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
The race for control of the House couldn't be tighter as Democrats work to flip the chamber in their favor. The most vulnerable are keeping a distance from Vice President Kamala Harris. So what are they campaigning on? NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
House Democrats only need a net gain of 4 seats to be able to flip the chamber in their favor. That means they need to hold on to the number of seats they currently have, as well as flip 4 that are currently held by Republicans. But with this year being a presidential race, the top of the ticket could influence down ballot races, making for a tough race for Democrat-controlled districts that Trump won in 2020. So what we've seen in these districts is those Democrat incumbents try to emphasize that they're an independent voice for voters. And one way that they do that is to distance themselves from not only the party leadership in Congress, but also notably from Vice President Kamala Harris. Here's one example from Alaska last night, a debate between the two House candidates.
And if it's our economy, if it's regarding guns, I'm happy to vote against my party.
Will you be voting for Kamala Harris?
It's a secret ballot, and I think both of our presidential candidates have flaws.
Peltola was the only Alaskan Democratic delegate not to vote for Vice President Harris's nomination at the DNC this year. She originally flipped this seat back in 2022 from red to blue. A similar situation we see over in Washington's 3rd district. This will be the first down ballot race for Congresswoman Perez to defend her seat, which will be a challenge considering that Trump won her district not once, but twice.
Who's to blame for the crisis taking place at the border, do you think?
Well, I mean, I've been very clear that the president should have taken more action.
She's one of 6 representatives who voted with Republicans this Congress to condemn Vice President Kamala Harris's handling of the southern border. Another on that list, Democratic Congressman Jared Golden of Maine.
Across 6 years, I voted for about $80 billion for CBP, for Border Patrol, for ICE. I stood up to the Build Back Better proposal that was President Biden's premier legislation. I said no to it.
But Golden does have experience navigating tight races. He carried that Trump won district even back in 2020 when Trump's name was at the top of the ticket. And of all these Democrats that we've mentioned, none of them have endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. And when Democrat leadership was pressed on this, the House Democrat campaign chief responded in their defense, telling The Hill earlier this week, the reason that they're all elected right now is because they have been independent, authentic voices for their districts. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Former President Trump continues his presidential campaign, rallying in Colorado this afternoon and getting ready to continue in Nevada. NTD's David Lamb is in Reno right now. David, good evening. What have you found out so far?
Yeah, hey, good evening, Tiff. Good to see you. So I'm in Reno, Nevada right now. Earlier, one of the directors with the venue said they estimate about 5,000 attendees here in the Grand Sierra Resort, and they're expecting that to double to 10,000, overflowing this venue right here. You can see people trickling in behind me. Now, earlier, President Trump was in Aurora, Colorado, and it's interesting he was there because Colorado is considered a blue Democratic state. Back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won that state by 5%. And President Joe Biden won the state in the previous election by 14%. Now, Trump today in Aurora said he stated his border stance, talking about the Venezuelan immigrants that he claims that are impacting the community through criminal activity. Now, the mayor of Aurora said earlier this week that that's an over-exaggeration. there is no Venezuelan gang impacting or taking over the city. And he said there's only, the incident is only in several apartment complexes. So President Trump, his message is to deport criminal, illegal immigrants. Now, earlier, I tried to get a feel of how local voters are feeling out here. And I also spoke to a retired U.S. Navy commander. Let's hear what they have to say.
Same thing, boy. You know, he's going to save our economy, close our borders, do all the great things that he's promised that he did 4 years ago. So we're just looking forward to getting him back into the office. It's certainly a step up from what we've got now.
My thing is, we've seen a dramatic thing happen during the current administration, and now you have Kamala saying, hey, we're going to do this if I get elected. Why now? Why now are you going to do something when you've had this problem in the past and you didn't do anything? So that's a big thing on me, but the economy is probably the most.
I don't necessarily always buy party politics, but her messaging is on point. It's positive, it's real, and the Trump message hasn't changed. It's negative. It's very much attack-based on a personal level versus, like, I guess, a message that is trying to raise up everybody as a whole and society as a whole.
Now, according to a Wall Street Journal poll, President Trump is up by 6 points in this battleground state of Nevada. And earlier, so he's expected to speak in about 2 hours, which is 5:30 local time here. Earlier, when we came by early in the morning, we saw people already lining up at 9 a.m., and we're still seeing people trickle in. So that's it for now. Back to you, Tiffany.
All right, David, thank you for that update. And joining us now at the Election Data Hub is NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, with just 25 days left until the presidential election, how are voters' top issues shaping this race?
Well, good question, Tiff. Let's go ahead and take a look at those top voter issues here right now. Now, this is according to a recent Gallup poll released just this week, actually, when voters were asked what issues are extremely important to them. They could choose more than one here. Now, well, number one here, no surprise, the economy here. Number two, democracy in the U.S. Third, then, is terrorism and national security. It was actually tied with Supreme Court justice picks. That's kind of a new one for me. And finally, immigration rounds out the top five. But back to number one here. Now, the economy, time and time again, we have seen this as the number one issue, not just over the last few years, but really over the past quarter of a century. So naturally, then, whoever voters think would handle the economy better would certainly have a leg up in this race. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here. Who voters trust to handle the economy? Number one here, well, there's only two actually, but Donald Trump, 54%, Kamala Harris, 45%. So he's got a 9-point lead over her in that question. But let's go ahead and take a look at this question historically, though, and see how this has impacted the race. Let's look at the last 6 cycles here, where voters were trusted, who voters trusted to handle the top election issue and what that actually issue was. You see the last 4 cycles, it was the economy, going all the way back to 2004 when it was actually the war in Iraq, and then in 2000, see George Bush was picked to handle that issue a little bit better. And as you can see, it worked out for him because he won both of those elections. Then Obama in 2008, he was picked over McCain to handle the economy better, and it worked out for him. But Trump in 2020 and Romney in 2012 both picked to handle the economy better, but did not win the election. Now, one other key piece of information is how overwhelmingly voters picked this candidate to handle the top issue here. Now, I ask this actually because Trump's 9-point margin is pretty big here. Only Obama's 9-point margin in the economy in 2008, when it was the housing economy was crashing then. Only that actually rivals this. You can see 2008, 47% to 38. That's a 9-point advantage for Obama in 2008 in who voters thought would handle the economy better then. Rivaled only by the 2024, where Trump has a 9-point lead there. And this worked out very well for Obama. He won the popular vote by more than 7%. That was the biggest lead or win, if you will, over the last 25 years. So, Tiff, that's where we are with top voter issues. Back to you at the desk.
All right, Dave, thanks for that breakdown. Israeli forces fired another deadly round of airstrikes on Lebanon's capital as they continue to go after the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Antony Blinken shared his insights on the conflict. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Smoke was seen rising from the rubble in central Beirut on Friday as residents inspected the damage of more Israeli airstrikes on their capital. According to Lebanon's health ministry, 22 people were killed in the strike and about 117 were injured.
The strike wasn't just powerful. How should I describe it to you? We lived through the war and the previous wars. It was not like what we are seeing and hearing now. My God, ease our minds and protect us, and protect this country. What more can we say?
Israeli forces have accused Hezbollah terrorists of storing weapons in residential buildings and schools in the heart of Beirut, endangering the civilian population. A Hezbollah politician on Friday said there were no Hezbollah leaders at the site of the strike. And Hezbollah's media relations officer said that the terrorist group was not storing weapons in southern Beirut. And he went on to say the videos of airstrikes released by Israeli forces that show secondary explosions are actually Israeli time bombs that explode later and not proof that Hezbollah is storing weapons. Meanwhile, Israel's chief of the general staff met with troops in southern Lebanon and gave this message.
We continue to operate against the enemy and will not stop until we ensure that we can safely return the residents.
And the director of the Israeli security agency said Hamas terrorists are also in Lebanon.
We will continue to pursue them everywhere. We will always remember the massacre of October 7th, and we will ensure that they remember the lesson of October 8th.
And Secretary of State Antony Blinken explained that existing UN resolutions haven't kept Hezbollah out of the region.
That, among other things, would make sure that forces are not up at the border between the country, certainly not irregular forces like Hezbollah, and non-state actors are supposed to be disarmed. Well, that didn't happen. And Hezbollah has posed an ongoing threat to Israel ever since.
He said that the Lebanese people he has spoken with want Lebanon to stand up and protect its citizens. Blinken said that one way for them to do that is to resolve the issue that Lebanon does not currently have a president. For the past 2 years, the Lebanese parliament has not been able to get enough votes to elect a president, in large part due to Hezbollah's influence in Lebanese politics. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Russia today strengthening ties with the Iranian regime. That's amid concerns over Iran aiding Moscow in the Ukraine war and rising tensions in the Middle East. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest, starting with an update on the battlefield situation.
Ukrainian officials say at least 4 people are dead after a Russian attack on Friday. It's the latest attack on Ukraine's southern Odessa region. The area has been coming under fire throughout the week. At least 10 people are reported wounded after Friday's attack. And Russian President Vladimir Putin said this while meeting the president of the Iranian regime on Friday.
Relations with Iran are a priority for us.
Moscow and Tehran signed a $1.7 billion deal for Iran to export drones to Russia after the Ukraine conflict started. At the same time, concerns are growing over rising tensions between Israel and Iran. Also, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meeting Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Friday. Zelensky once again advocated for what he calls a victory plan.
Today, I will present the plan to Olaf on how, in our view, to force Russia to end this war. How to end this war, hopefully no later than in 2025.
Zelensky added that he hopes allies won't cut funding as it's crucial to win the conflict. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken today reaffirmed Washington's commitment to supporting Southeast Asian countries. He said the United States' focus has remained intensely on the Indo-Pacific region, with an eye on China's aggressive activities in the South China Sea and around Taiwan.
It's because it's so critical to our own future, to the lives and livelihoods of Americans. So given that, it's my belief that that basic approach will continue, irrespective of who's president. We remain concerned about China's increasingly dangerous and unlawful actions in the South and East China Seas, which have injured people and harmed vessels from ASEAN nations, and contradict commitments to peaceful resolution of disputes.
The United States will continue to support freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight in the Indo-Pacific.
Blinken spoke at the summit of Southeast Asian leaders from ASEAN. That's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Some of these countries have territorial disputes with China, which have resulted in violence. On the other hand, they have close trade relations with China. During this week's summit in Laos, China nearly completed its free trade agreement with these countries, while the U.S. made little progress in this area. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Election lawsuits in the state of Wisconsin stack up as voters and government officials challenge actions that could swing the final votes closer to either party. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards reviews recent legal developments in this crucial battleground state.
For nearly 2 decades, Wisconsin voters have gone back and forth between Democratic and Republican candidates, confirming its reputation as a preeminent purple state in elections. This back and forth could mean that voters in the state prioritize issues more than political parties, making it a crucial battleground state in the presidential election. Former President Trump visited Wisconsin 4 times in 9 days. Vice President Kamala Harris has recently visited the state twice in 1 week. Both candidates told large crowds why they should vote.
If I win, we will have peace in the world again. I guarantee we will have peace in the world again. And if Kamala gets 4 more, unthinkable, right? If she gets 4 more years, the world goes up in smoke. This world will go up in smoke.
Instead, it was the same old tired show. The same old tired playbook we've heard for years, with no plan on how he would address the needs of the American people. Well, folks, it's time to turn the page.
Wisconsin has 10 electoral college votes up for grabs. The candidates are in a tight race to win the Badger State, with Trump in the lead on the most important issue, the economy. But Harris gets higher marks for her personal qualities, such as temperament and age. The former president is no stranger to election lawsuits in Wisconsin. After the 2020 presidential results, he filed lawsuits in federal and state court, calling for disqualification of more than 200,000 ballots and alleging there were irregularities in how absentee ballots were administered. This year, leading into the election, several voting lawsuits are in the courts. But it's not just Trump who's filing them. The federal government and some registered voters are concerned about election integrity. Of course, one of the hot-button issues during the 2020 election was voting machines, with the Trump campaign claiming the Wisconsin voting machines were prone to hacking and glitches that flipped the votes. In a recent case, the Department of Justice won a lawsuit against a small northern Wisconsin town. A federal judge ordered the town to bring back voting machines in future elections. To avoid the controversy surrounding voting machines, the town of Thornapple voted to use all paper ballots in the April primaries. But word of the paper ballots reached the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, which informed the town it was violating federal law. The law requires handicap-accessible voting machines at each polling location. The defiant town used paper ballots again after receiving a warning from the government, which resulted in a lawsuit. The town's top election official had argued that no disabled person was left out because none of them requested the special machines. Another hot-button issue in 2020 was absentee ballot drop boxes. The Wisconsin Supreme Court in 2022 declared that drop boxes could only be located at election clerks' offices, rather than at several locations across cities and towns. But after the court majority flipped from Republican to Democrat, the ballot boxes became legal again. But some local officials are still deciding not to use them. Wausau Mayor Doug Denny recently removed the city's one and only drop box, which was legally located in front of City Hall. Denny, a Republican, said he was concerned that the box would be stolen.
But for all I know, and all anyone knows, that could have been in the river. It was not bolted down. I went in and got a cart and I wheeled it up to my office. So I put it in a safe place And there it sits.
Federal officials investigated the removal, but there was no need for a lawsuit since the box has now been returned to its location. But the mayor's action has caused quite a stir in the town. Now let's take a look at one more. Now this is a lawsuit filed by 3 Milwaukee voters. They're challenging the accuracy of voter rolls. Again, this is an issue that came up a lot in 2020 with Trump claiming ineligible voters remained on the rolls in several states. And this is an issue that Republicans are challenging in several of the swing states. So these Milwaukee voters are claiming that the Election Commission failed to investigate 150,000 voter registrations with address irregularities. They're asking a local state court to order the commission to send out notices to all 150,000 registrants and to reclassify them as inactive if they don't respond within 30 days. So those are the most recent legal developments. Not all of them are lawsuits, but they involve events that trigger election laws. There are probably another 5 or more legal controversies currently ongoing in Wisconsin, from Republicans in Madison demanding a probe of over 2,000 duplicate absentee ballots being sent out, to voters suing a city for hiring only 8 out of 55 eligible Republican poll workers. Tiffany, back to you.
Former President Obama kicked off his campaign blitz for Harris today in Pittsburgh. Now, will Obama's popularity and messaging abilities be enough to give Harris the boost she needs to get across the finish line? Joining us now to discuss is Democratic strategist Theron Bond. Theron, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, to begin, in your view, how effective will Obama's campaigning for Harris be in motivating voters, especially those first-time voters who showed up for Obama in droves in 2008?
I think there are two different things happening here. Is he dominating the news cycle? Absolutely, 100%. How much will he motivate voters? That's yet to be determined. Overall, former President Barack Obama brings a lot of energy. People love to hear him speak. People also love to hear his wife, the former First Lady Michelle Obama, speak as well. The Obama name just carries a lot of weight. How that will fare during this election cycle, we really don't know. Some people feel a bit off-put by his comments to some of the Black men in a recent conversation. And then other people view that as him just giving it to everybody straight, which is what people have asked for Vice President Harris for quite some time. Do I think it's engaging people and igniting some additional conversations? Absolutely. That's why we're here talking about it today. How that will translate at the ballot box, I'm not quite sure, because while we know what former President Obama did and what his record of service looks like, we're still not 100% sure on Vice President Harris and how she intends to carry out her policies.
And on that note, which strategies of Obama's is the Harris campaign employing in terms of, say, messaging, social media, and get out the vote efforts?
I would say hope would be the largest identifiable message, just instilling hope in that's what Vice President Harris wants to carry on as well, is people can have hope in the government again. People can have hope in policies again. People can have hope in receiving equitable resources in the United States again. The problem is that that's the message that he sends, and that's the message that he's trying to promote, but he's trying to promote it under Vice President Harris. And while that sounds like a sure thing, they're just really two different people. I mean, yes, this is a Black man and a Black woman, but aside of gender, even the way they navigate policies, the way they energize voters is just very, very different. And so I think they're trying to duplicate what happened with the Obama campaign, but that's like a once in a lifetime mobilization that we may not ever see again. That was just very well organized, so many hands involved, and people really got behind him, so much so that he was a 2-term president. We don't know that that's what America wants from Vice President Harris, unfortunately.
And Theron, in many ways, this election cycle is vastly different from 2008 and 2012 when Obama was running. The opponent, Trump, is also very different from those Obama was facing. How effective might these Obama strategies that you mentioned, like hope, be in 2024?
it's interesting because the American people need hope. We need hope that things will be better after natural disasters. We need to understand that hope will be better even if the economy is not doing well, that it will get to a better place, that it will get to a better place after a pandemic, that we will get better education, that we will able to go from surviving to thriving, that, you know, everyone will come up together. But the reality is that it just doesn't feel like that. And right now, what's working well with voters are things that really tug on their heartstrings, really tug on their emotions. And that's something that, unfortunately, Vice President Harris isn't doing as well. We hear a lot of voters talk about, you know, this isn't a personality contest, and we hear a lot of pundits agree with that. The reality is we may not want it to be a personality contest, but realistically, people want somebody they can relate to. They want to see some version of themselves. They want to feel seen and they want to feel heard. And despite how exciting or unique the things that former President Donald Trump often says, and, you know, sometimes they're very outlandish, people go, ooh, that makes sense, or ooh, I thought about that, or ooh, that resonates with me. And there aren't as many people, at least, saying that out loud about Vice President Harris. And honestly, I think what's going to happen is there are a lot of people talking about things on the surface, but we honestly don't know what's going to happen when they go to cast their ballots on November 5th. And it could be different from what they're saying out loud.
I want to zoom in on that. Vice President Harris on The View this week said that she couldn't think of anything she would have done differently from President Biden over the past 4 years. Now, Obama ran on being an agent of change, and of course, in 2008, his message of hope and change resonated deeply with voters. Now, with comments like this on The View and Harris being a part of the current administration, how can she gain the support of voters who are seeking that change?
It's so interesting because that was one of the million-dollar questions that people wanted to hear and have an answer from Vice President Harris is just how is she going to be different from President Biden? She says she's going to be different, but how? Lay that out for the American people. And that's something that she hasn't done. And as a matter of fact, oftentimes she's kind of doubled down on some of the things that the administration has done, that being the Biden-Harris administration. So that means they've collectively worked together on a number of things that she's been okay with. And if she's not okay with it, she's being very silent about it or just choosing to navigate it in a way that we're not seeing. Which is really unfortunate because people want to see different from now. And if she is not distinguishing herself from President Biden enough to get across to the American people that she does represent change, then we won't see it, and it'll be reflected at the ballot box come this November.
Theron Bond, Democratic strategist, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Modern American politics is polarized, and many Americans report they're afraid to make their political views known. A 2020 poll from the Cato Institute found 62% of Americans say they have political views they are afraid to share. 4 years have passed since that poll, but a large number of voters still report the sentiment. Earlier, we spoke to Anthony Constantino, the CEO of Sticker Mule. He first went viral in July for being one of the few CEOs addressing what he calls the dangerous levels of anti-Trump sentiment. He shares how business executives can utilize their platforms to foster political tolerance. Anthony Constantino, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Pleased to be here talking to you and all your listeners.
Now, on July 13th, just hours after the first assassination attempt against former President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, where that now iconic photo of Trump fist pumping in the air, blood dripping down from his face with the American flag behind him, he actually wrote a post on X saying in part the political hate for Trump and his supporters has gone too far, adding that many of his supporters are too scared to make their voices heard, including you. Why did you decide to put your fear aside and make this public post on your company's official account?
Yeah, you know, first of all, I wrote in the post, I got people that stick me that like Biden, I got people that like Trump, and we all get along, and I don't know why that can't be the situation in the entire country. So I tried to mention that and bring the country together through that. The reaction was very harsh, even though the message was very nice. But, I've been watching the situation in the country for the last 8 years, and I've seen President Trump treated unfairly, a lot of unfair hate directed at him, but really his supporters have been treated unfairly too. These are people supporting a guy that brought peace to the world and did a lot of great things, and yet they get trashed and smeared and defamed all over the place. I said, look, there's bullets flying. One of them hit him, and it's time for people to start speaking up. And I'm not the only one. Other people came before me. Elon really deserves a lot of credit. Even Mark Zuckerberg deserves some credit. He wrote an apology letter, and he stuck up saying some nice things about President Trump recently too, but there's a lot of other people doing it. 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg, all sorts of people are speaking up to say. Bill Ackman, even got RFK now, a very respected Democrat, Tulsi Gabbard. Lots of people are trying to join in and fix the situation because I think people are tired of the division and tired of all the stuff going on.
Now, your post has been viewed over 12 million times now. What has been the response so far, both positive and negative?
The original response was massive backlash, but I was shocked at the number of people telling me to kill myself. That was the worst part. Thousands of people writing in saying, something like that. And that's not a good thing at all. But I think overall, I think the post is having the effect it wanted, and all the activity I'm doing is having the effect I want. Ever since I got involved, I like to put all my energy towards something. Once I get involved in something, I've been putting all my energy towards trying to fix this situation. I think the discourse is improving, as I mentioned. A lot of people are speaking up and starting to say good things about Trump, and I think it's becoming more normal to admit you like him. You're seeing even Mike Tyson said he likes him recently, so I think the post is achieving what he achieved. The other activities I'm doing too. I recently launched something called Sticker Pack as well, stickerpac.com, where people can get free Trump stickers so they can, in a friendly way, tell their friends they like Trump. We need more people simply admitting it because people stay quiet.
And you mentioned at the top that your company also includes people who support President Biden or the Democratic Party as well. What has been the response to your post within your own company?
I'm very impressed with the reaction of my company. There was another company called Basecamp, and I don't like picking on them because I like the company, but their CEO wrote a message some years ago saying no more political conversation at work, which is a good message. I agree with him, by the way, and half his company quit over it. Well, I did what I did, and some people say it's more controversial. I thought I wrote something nice. I'm doing good things, but I haven't lost a single person. Everybody stood by my side, and a lot of people here don't like president, like the other candidate, and that's fine, but everyone's got respect for me and from all the good work I've done over the years to try to treat my people right and do the right thing for people. And I think that's what this country needs, more people with good reputations speaking up so that the Trump the voter gets defined in a better light. It deserves to be defined in a better light because too many people like myself stay quiet out of fear because the backlash is severe. It's emotionally difficult to deal with, and it's also can be financially difficult to deal with. And for that reason, they've defined the Trump voter in a very unfair way, which is really wrong. It's really wrong.
And when it comes to toning down the political hate and divisiveness we're seeing, how do you see Americans coming together? Is it highlighting shared common values like bringing manufacturing back, or how do you see that happening?
I think people are already coming together. People are tired of the hate. People also want something called free speech. They really like free speech. I tried to put a sign on my building that said, vote for Trump, and the mayor put a restraining order on me to block my free speech. That got overturned in court, but it only got overturned because I have the resources to get great attorneys. A lot of people that are getting silenced, they don't have the resources I have, but I was threatened to be put in jail over a sign, but I had great lawyers that protected my free speech. But free speech is something almost every American wants. A few people don't want it. Their names are Hillary Clinton and John Kerry and Tim Walz. They all went on record saying they don't want it, but most of America wants free speech. Most of America wants manufacturing jobs, and most of America wants to be friends with their neighbors and their family members and their friends, no matter their political backgrounds. When I grew up, people were friends, whether you were a Democrat, a Republican, left-leaning, right-leaning. Me and my friends all got together in the coffee shop or in the diners, and we talked about stuff late at night, and we had different opinions, and it was fun to talk about different opinions. We didn't have the situation we had today. So people want that to go away. They want manufacturing jobs back, and they want free speech, and they want unity. And right now, President Trump's the unity candidate.
Anthony Constantino, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.